Good afternoon, and welcome to our Women's History Month program hosted by the North Carolina Department of Administration and Council for Women and Youth Involvement. I am delighted to bring to you our annual event commemorating women's history, to recognize leaders in our state, and to hear leadership lessons from our esteemed guests, including a youth poet to close out our program. So please stay tuned for that. Before I bring on our first special guest, I'd like to acknowledge the North Carolina Department of Administration's leadership and continued support for the work of the North Carolina Council for Women. To kick us off, allow me to introduce a person who needs no introduction, but let me share a few things that you may not know. As we celebrate Women's History Month, Secretary Elaine Marshall has made plenty of history and trailblazing on her own right. In 1996, Secretary of State Elaine F. Marshall became the first woman elected statewide to the executive branch. Voters reelected her for a seventh term in 2020. A former teacher, small business owner, and private practice attorney, Secretary Marshall was elected to the North Carolina Senate before rising to statewide office. Under Secretary Marshall's administration, 1.5 million businesses have been formed. She has pioneered e-commerce in government, protected investors and intellectual property owners, and promoted financial capital formation in North Carolina. Secretary Marshall has been very active in many civic groups in the areas of child welfare, women's issues, agriculture, and small town economic development. She is also a past president of the National Association of Secretaries of State. She holds a BS in home economics from the University of Maryland and a law degree from Campbell University. She's received honorary doctorate degrees from Campbell University, Leeds McClay College, Meredith College, and the Republic of Moldova State University of Medicine. Secretary Marshall, if you will come forward at this time.
Thank you very, very much, Annette, and thank you to all the planners of this event for including me. I love March. I love Women's History Month. It is just a wonderful time to celebrate our achievements, but also to challenge ourselves going forward. There's an old saying that well-behaved women seldom make history. Well, that was perfectly meant for me because sometimes I don't behave very, very well. And I would encourage all of you on this to take note of that and modify your behavior in that kind of, well-behaved means following the norm, waiting for your time, you're not ready yet, all of those kinds of things that you hear. So well-behaved women, take off. It's History Month. This is your launching pad. I am delighted to present to you the proclamation for Women's History Month for 2021, issued by the governor of the state of North Carolina, the Honorable Roy Cooper. It goes as follows. Whereas the state of North Carolina is proud to be home to a diverse population of women dedicated to our nation's well-being and whose courageous efforts advance the livelihood of all people. And whereas women make up more than 51% of the population in North Carolina and serve as leaders in our communities, continuing the breakthrough of barriers they face. And whereas women comprise approximately 57% of North Carolina's labor force, an increasing number of women employed in North Carolina are in managerial and professional occupations. And whereas in 2018, women represented less than 18% of public boards headquartered in North Carolina. North Carolina continues to strive to diversify its leadership at the corporate and state level to accurately reflect the vision, values, and ideas of our state's population. And whereas the 2021 national theme for Women's History Month is Valiant Women of the Vote, refusing to be silenced, honoring women who have fought to win suffrage rights for women who continue to fight for voting rights of others. And whereas, despite decades of marches, petitions, and passage of the 19th Amendment, suffrage did not grant voting rights for all women, particularly those of color, and the ongoing fight for equality continues today. Whereas we honor and pay tribute to the many women in leadership who have shaped North Carolina. Lillian Exum Clement, who became our state's first female legislator in 1920, Kate Bird Johnson, who became the first woman in the country to serve as a commissioner of public welfare, and the first woman in North Carolina to lead a major state department in 1921. Eva Clayton, who became the first African-American woman to represent North Carolina in the United States House of Representatives in 1992. Kay Hagan, who defeated Elizabeth Dole in the 2008 election to become the first woman to oust a female incumbent in the United States Senate. And Beverly Perdue, North Carolina's 73rd governor and first female governor of the state. Whereas 2021 marks the 58th anniversary of the North Carolina Council for Women and Youth Involvement, an initiative charged with advancing and protecting the rights of women, providing a voice of influence on issues affecting women, and celebrating women's achievements and leadership throughout the state. Today, the Council continues to provide guidance on many issues facing women, including health and wellness, youth development, violence against women, education, and employment. And whereas the state of North Carolina joins in honoring the legacy of women of every race, class, and ethnic background who changed the world by contributing to the economic, cultural, and social development of North Carolina in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. Now, therefore, I, Roy Cooper, Governor of the state of North Carolina, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as Women's History Month in North Carolina and commend its observance to all citizens. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and affixed the great seal of the state of North Carolina at the Capitol in Raleigh this 23rd day of February in the year of our Lord 2021, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 245th. Signed, Roy Cooper, Governor. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank
wonderful.
Thank you very much, Secretary Marshall. We applaud you for your leadership, for being a trailblazer and a history maker for the state of North Carolina. And we thank Governor Cooper for this proclamation.
Thank you very much.
Now, at this time, I'd like to introduce Jenny Black. In her day job, Jenny is the CEO of Planned Parenthood South Atlantic, and she has dedicated her career to advancing women's health, education, and rights. Governor Cooper appointed Jenny to chair of the Council for Women and Youth Involvement in 2017, and we've been working together ever since. So I thank you for moderating this great panel today, Jenny.
Hey, Annette.
Welcome now.
Hey, Annette, thank you. I'm so pleased to be here to moderate this panel again in commemoration of Women's History Month. And thank you to all of you who have joined us today. I am really excited to talk with these incredible women leaders. I know that you will be as inspired as I have been in getting to know them. And Annette, it's really just been such a pleasure to co-lead the council with you over the years. The way that the council works is that we are a division of the Department of Administration. We are really lucky to have some great staff, as well as a board of community members that span all across the state, just like Annette and I. Now, the council's role is to advise the governor and policymakers on matters affecting the quality of life for women in North Carolina. And we do that in a whole variety of ways, not the least of which is producing a series of reports on the status of women in North Carolina. Now, these reports are a real treasure trove of data, and based on that data, we make a set of policy recommendations that are designed to improve the status of women in our state. And most recently, we issued a supplemental report called Exploiting Equity, a Pandemic's Gendered and Racial Toll on the Women and Families of North Carolina. Now, in this report, we talked to women all across the state to hear from them firsthand how they're coping. Based on our data from the Status of Women reports and our experiences interviewing this broad cross-section of women, we make some specific recommendations for an intersectional approach to COVID recovery in our state. Now, the council also administers grants that support agencies working to lower the incidence of sexual assault and domestic violence against women in North Carolina, along with a whole host of other things. You cannot hardly keep up with this incredible staff. Now, you can read all of these rich reports and learn a lot more about the council, as well as sign up for our newsletter on our website. So I really want to encourage everybody to visit us there. But you didn't come here today to hear me talk. You came to hear from our incredible panelists. So let's just get right to it. I'm really excited to ask each one of these folks to introduce themselves. And first, I would like to hear from Nada Alam on the Durham County Board of Commissioners.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you, Secretary Marshall, for reading this proclamation, and thank you, Annette, for all of your work on the Women's Commission. I'm Nida Alam. I'm currently serving in my first term on the Durham County Board of Commissioners after being elected in 2020. Before being elected to this board, I served as the third vice chair for the North Carolina Democratic Party, and I was also appointed in 2018 to the Durham Mayor's Council for Women, where I served as chair of that board. And prior to all of this work, I worked as a political director on the Sanders 2016 campaign, and I'm just really excited to be here with all of you to talk about my journey into politics.
Amazing, thank you. Next, let's hear from Nana Asante Smith on the Durham Mayor's Council for Women.
Thank you, Jenny, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm very excited to be in community with you all this afternoon and excited to, looking forward to an engaging and informative discussion. As Jenny mentioned, my name is Nana Sante Smith. I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the Durham Mayor's Council for Women, a role I undertook just last year. Prior to that, I served as a member of the council. I also serve as a member and political action coordinator for the People's Alliance here in Durham, in addition to serving as a committee member for the Grievance Committee of the North Carolina State Bar in North Carolina, for the state of North Carolina. I am involved in many other aspects of the community, including but not limited to working with the Duke Alumni Association and and engaging in many other community service activities. My day job, or my regular job as I call it, is serving as an attorney with the law firm of Parker Poe, Adams and Bernstein, where I am an associate attorney in the business litigation practice there. Prior to my work at Parker Poe, I served as an assistant district attorney in Wake County as soon as I finished law school. I was born in Ghana and grew up in Madison, Wisconsin before being led here to the great state of North Carolina for my undergraduate degree at Duke University before transitioning to earn my Juris Doctor degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Again, I'm thrilled to be here this afternoon and thank you for having me.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, next I'm really happy to introduce everyone to Brenda Howerton. Brenda is the chair of the Durham County Board of Commissioners. Oh, Brenda, I think you might be muted.
Okay, I just did that. So good afternoon, everyone. So it is an absolute honor and a privilege to be with you this evening. And thank you, Jenny, for this invitation, and Annette, all of you that's on this panel. It's an honor to be with fabulous leaders around the state of North Carolina. You know, and as Jenny said, my name is Brenda Howerton, and I am the chair of the Board of County Commissioners in Durham. I have been a county commissioner now this is my 13th year, quite a few years there. So, and with that, I have served as the president of the State of Association of County Commissioners, and that's for all 100 counties. I have served on so many boards and commissions right now. It would take too long to give you all of those. But one of the things that I am really, really proud of in serving as the president of the association, each president had to come up with an initiative. Mine was that all children thrive in all 100 counties. And last year, I was given an award. And you in these positions, you receive a lot of awards. And the one that I get tickled the most is the Baby Advocate Award. I am a grandmother of 4 children. And that's grandmothers are, what we do. We spoil our grandbabies. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve the citizens in this community and statewide. And I'm glad to be with you today.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. All right. And next, I would love to introduce everyone to Vivian Slade. Vivian is the chair of the Durham County Women's Commission. Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you so much. I too am ecstatic about being on the panel today. I'm very excited to talk about leadership and just be on this distinguished panel. So thank you for having me on today. As aforementioned, I am the chair of Durham County Women's Commission. This is my second term, but I've been there about 4 years, and it is my second year as chair of the Durham County Women's Commission. So I am very honored to serve with those phenomenal women that we have, very talented and skilled women, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to be the chair of that. By profession, I work in human services in my beloved Durham County. So so that is me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Great. Well, I told y'all that we were going to have an inspiring conversation today, and I was not kidding. I am so excited about this really deep bench of women leaders in our community. So let's get right to it. Now, I have some questions. We have some questions that were submitted in advance by folks who have registered for this event. But I also want to flag that you can drop questions in the live chat box on the live stream. Now, we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. But depending on time, we may have to punt some of those questions to our newsletter. So there is a huge plug and incentive for signing up for our newsletter. So whatever questions we don't get to during our conversation together today, we will follow up and answer those in our newsletter. So let's get right to it. So, we talked a lot about, y'all are all so invested and involved in your communities. So the first question that I have for each of you is, what advice do you have for women on how to get involved and make a difference in their communities? Let's start with you, Vivian.
Great. So I would say that there are a lot of pieces that make the whole. And so I would encourage everyone to find the piece that they fit in. What is that piece that interests them? What is that piece that ignites their passion? And then once you do that, begin to do the research. Check out the city or county resources. Google is my best friend, so using that as well to try and find some organizations that kind of align and match with those passions that you have. And then I would say begin to seek out events that also align with those passions and interests that you have, and talk to people. Begin to go out, talk to them, find out what you can do to get involved. And lastly, I would say maybe just looking around at the various disparities that may be in the community and see what type of solutions or what influence you can bring to that area.
Awesome. Thank you. What do you think, Neva?
I think Vivian really touched on such an important point about finding what's best fits for you and your family. There's so many different ways that you can serve your community, and people can tend to believe that, running for office is the only way, which isn't true. Getting involved in your PTA, your HOA, joining a women's commission or a youth commission, all of these are different ways to get involved. And really, an important factor for me is making sure, as I take up space and seek different opportunities, how am I bringing my community along with me to the table and making sure their voices are heard? And as Secretary Marshall mentioned, I think one thing that's so important for women to remember is that well-behaved women seldom make history. And so it's important to remind yourself that, people will try to tell you that you're not doing things properly, to wait your turn, that someone else will take care of it, but just knowing that you are fully capable of accomplishing your goals and serving your community.
We do hear wait our turn a lot, don't we? Yeah. Maybe our turn is now. Great. All right, Nada, thank you. All right. What do you think, Nana?
So I really appreciate this question because it's so important and really forces us to contextualize what leadership and service looks like. And I think when you're considering how to lead and how to serve without sacrificing your peace, I think it's important to go where you're needed, not always where you feel the most comfortable or where you want to be, but again, without sacrificing your peace and well-being, identifying which areas of your community need you the most. I think that sometimes we think leadership has to be kind of this sexy, sultry, beautiful package. And I think true leadership represents kind of making difficult decisions sometimes and taking a leap of faith and saying, hey, where can I be the most useful? Where can my talents and passion be the most useful, even if it doesn't seem like, hey, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, right? Or where I need to be, when in fact it is. So I would say underlying all that, to not be led or distracted by fear and assess, again, I have to keep emphasizing, without compromising your peace, where you are most needed.
Right, that piece is hard won, right? But also what I'm hearing you say is to maybe challenge ourselves, to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone a little bit. And that for a lot of us, maybe stepping into the limelight or leadership roles might not feel inherently comfortable, but to stretch ourselves a little bit. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely, Jenny. I think some of the positions or opportunities I've sought that have been the most beneficial for me and my community have been those that I've been kind of scared of, right? Initially, I became the president of the North Carolina Association of Black Lawyers, a statewide organization, very early on in my career as an attorney. And my first thing was, wait, I'm too young. I just got out of law school. How can I lead a statewide organization? But I recognize the need for revitalizing such an important organization that so substantially serves as the bedrock for so much in North Carolina. And had I let that fear debilitate me and not really assess what the organization needed, I would have never ended up in that role. So I really think about those kinds of personal experiences when I share why, my belief is what it is.
Oh, I love it. I've heard it said that if you aren't a little bit scared moving into a new thing, then maybe it's not the right new thing. Being just a little bit scared is maybe healthy. Love it. Awesome. Thank you. All right, Brenda, what advice do you have for us?
Well, thank you so much. I was thinking, what else can I add to what the brilliant young ladies have already said? And I think about Representative John Lewis being willing to get into good trouble. And I think as women, we think that we have to be nice. And as the secretary said, nice women don't make history. So, I did think when I ran for office, when I decided to be in public life, I did not think that I was good enough. I knew enough. I had enough money, had enough everything. It was never, the conversation was not enough. And I realized after experiences in life that I was enough. I am enough. And I don't mind making good trouble. So as women, women come as leaders. They bring skills, different structure, different experiences. And I think that as women, one of the things that when we bring our willingness to not be I, but to be we, and being willing to take the responsibility and the accountability for the action. Yeah, we're willing to take the pride and the acknowledgement, but are we willing to take on the accountability and responsibility and own when things are not going well and own when things are going, when they are going good? So, and bring our sisters along with us, because none of us get anything done by ourselves. It just doesn't happen. I serve on a board with 5 women. None of us can get anything done by ourselves. It takes a team. So being willing to work alongside someone else, another woman, to make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you. Collaboration, linking arms. We are much stronger together, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Great. All right, panel. Thank you. So I'm really curious how, in your sort of paths to leadership roles, when you decided it was your time, that it was the right time for you and your family. So I'd love to hear what you think about that. Let's start with you this time, Neda.
Yeah, for me, honestly speaking, I didn't know I was ever going to get involved in politics, and I studied sustainable materials and technology at NC State. My plan was to stay in that field, find something STEM related, except in February of 2015, I lost my close friend Yusra Abu Salha, her husband Dia Barakat, and her sister Rosanna Abu Salha in the Chapel Hill shooting. And it was that moment, the way the media talked about the loss of these 3 lives, minimizing it to over a parking dispute, instead of addressing it for what it truly was, which was a hate crime, that their neighbor murdered them because they were Muslim. And as soon as Yusra moved in, visibly Muslim with her hijab, that really sparked for me that my community's voice wasn't being heard and my community's voice wasn't at the table. And that's why it was so easy for the police and the media to run with this story that, 3 amazing, beautiful people could just simply be killed over a parking spot. And that's what really triggered for me to start looking for opportunities to serve. Not even run for office from the start. I looked at campaigns I could get involved with, community organizations I could volunteer with, any way that I could have my voice heard, but also bringing my community's voice to the table as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Vivian, what about you? When did you decide it was your time?
Well, I know someone that always says when you bring a group of people together, the leader will emerge. And I would say that that's kind of been how I am over the years in community involvement as well as by profession. I just kind of naturally was inclined to leadership. But the first thing that I really had to learn coming up to leading this role is first how to lead myself. I had to learn how to not take imposed voices, but to be able to look inside and find and hear my own voice, know what my truth is, what I stand on, what I believe in. And that's your first service is to yourself. Because if you can't lead yourself, then you can't lead anyone else either. So having that awareness was very important to me. But then I'm also a process thinker. So whenever I see things or situations, issues, I'm always looking at how can this be better? How can we bring innovation to this? Because I'm like gung ho creativity, but you know, I try to do that, and so I became a member of the Durham County Women's Commission, and we had a phenomenal leader at that time. And then I began to look at things on visions that I had. And then she decided to step down. And I said, hey, this is a great opportunity for some of the things that I've seen that I would like to bring to the table as well and follow the leadership that she gave. And so that's what brought me to this spot.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so Nana, what about you? How did you know it was your time?
I say this sincerely, but with the utmost humility. I really do believe I was born to lead. And I actually believe that all of us as women are born to lead. I think kind of where leaders emerge is in our environment, right? And what privilege and access looks like, and how we're able to manifest the leadership that's within us. And for me, it was, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family that also recognized that I was born to lead, right? And that support system was really integral to fulfilling, I think, my destiny as a leader. I would also say that being born to lead also means, and recognizing that leadership comes in many forms, shapes, and sizes, right? I think sometimes we get so committed and married to our quintessential notions of leadership, not realizing that there's so much value in leadership across the board and what leadership looks like, right? It transcends a title, it transcends a position, and I believe we have so many leaders amongst us who just need access, who need support, who need someone to believe in them. And again, I was very fortunate to be born into a family that saw it within me and encouraged me to see it within myself, even when I didn't always believe in myself. And I continue to be surrounded by family and friends who continue to cultivate that, because the path to leadership really is a journey that I believe is never ending. So that's what I would say.
Amazing. So it sounds like, you know, what I heard from both you and Vivian is sort of leading with your values, right? Yeah. Okay, Brenda, when did you know it was your time? Oh, sounds like we're having some audio issues, Brenda.
Okay. Yes, we were. So, you know, you mentioned a few minutes ago, you know, about women, and I was just reading something in the Washington Post about this pandemic, and the workforce participation for women has dipped 57%, and it's the lowest it's ever been in 3 decades. When you think about women that, and I grew up in a community, was poor, poverty, and even then there were so many women that were out of work. So I got to see that up close and be a part of that environment. And when, so political office was not even on my radar. And then I married and having 4 children, and my heart, I have a lot of compassion for Netta and her experience. I came to this office through tragedy of 2 of my children being gunned down, through hate crimes, through racism, and trying to get justice for my children being murdered and being blocked by the system, not being able to get answers. And I got tired of knocking on the doors. I got tired of knocking on the doors and not getting answers. So I decided at some point, after years of knocking on doors and marching in the street, that I was going to figure out another way to get the answers and go inside. And through a lot of training and consulting with other people and talking to other people to mentor me is, how do you do this? How do you run for an office? You have no idea what it's like to be in political office, and I didn't. So I decided to run for soil and water, where I wouldn't be under the spotlight. So I stayed in soil and water for 6 years, learning, just kind of circling around, trying to figure out what was happening and how do you do that. And I finally took the plunge and ran for county commissioner. But it was always out of ensuring that there were voices at the table that were not normally heard. And when you think of people, victims of crime, their voices are not at the table. I don't consider myself a victim. I have been victimized. Surely that. But I am not a victim by any means. So I came through to this position, being an advocate for others that didn't have a voice at the table.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Brenda. We have some questions from the audience that I would love to explore with you all. I want to start with you, Vivian. Can you share with us what are the activities of Durham and the Cities for Cedaw, which is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women?
Okay. Well, the Women's Commission was so, we were in a great place to partner with Women in C back in 2018 to make Cedaw into fruition, to manifest that resolution. And so we were very excited about that. Since then, we have done various projects to align with the vision of Cedaw. We have also done a resolution in support of reproductive health care and denouncing laws that hinder reproductive rights and making sure that women have access to reproductive care, no matter, their insurance costs or what have you. We have also recently, we are partnering with Mame and with the Durham Women's Council, with Nana, with the Black Maternal Health. And that is something that is coming up in April that we're doing. We're having a forum, and it's very crucial because that is a strong topic in the city of Durham. Black women are 3 to 4 more times likely to die from preventative pregnancy complications, things that could have been prevented. Our infant mortality is higher than whites. And so that is something that we want to make sure that we eliminate that type of discrimination for our Black women and sometimes young women, with the healthcare system. We also are still in partnership with Women in C. They raise the scholars up who are out here advocating for change. And so we try to support them as much as possible in those efforts as well. Part of that resolution for Cedaw was to also do some gender analysis. I'm very happy about our partnership with University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and the Star Lab, and our collaboration is called the REACH. And they will be doing some gender analysis on women and girls in Durham. So we have a lot going on, very excited about it, to make sure that we stay in line with those things that we proclaimed back in 2018 with Cedaw.
Oh, that's really, really inspiring to hear. I mean, those health disparities are so real and have only been exacerbated by COVID over the past year. This is absolutely the time to deal with it. So thank you for your leadership on that. Okay, so let's see. The next question is for Nana. How can we better reach women in underserved areas, such as rural communities that don't have reliable internet access?
I think that's a great question because I think in many facets of our society, rural communities are often forgotten. And I think the best way to reach women and folks in those areas are to go into those communities and partner with those who are interested in those communities and doing the work and finding out from them how to connect with their communities. I think sometimes we engage in a little too much of mental gymnastics and assumptions about what's good for communities that we're not a part of, right? I think we have to start by having those conversations and asking, what do we need? What can we do to empower you? Not to lead you or drag you along, but what can we do to pour into you so that you can actualize the community that you wish to see? So I would say having those initial conversations by going into those communities, not relying on social media, nothing of that sort, and connecting with folks who know those communities so that that conversation is productive. And then secondly, I think it's important to keep in mind that we have to be very careful about the assumptions we make about what does work and what does not work in rural communities. Nobody knows themselves better than community members. And we have to trust that and be willing to know our place and position as supporters, as opposed to those who are going to come and kind of barge in and impose upon rural communities what we think works for them. So I think in terms of that being proactive in that sense and being mindful of our assumptions and our actions, we can get a better sense of how to get rural communities engaged. Because frankly, I don't know the answer. I don't live in a rural community. And I don't think we should presuppose that we do know those answers, but we got to get in there and ask those questions so that we can become more informed.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're kind of thinking along the lines of, no decisions about us without us, right? Like we aren't designing solutions without the right people at the table.
Correct. And I think, we often do that, and even the most well-intentioned people do that, right? Especially when
Right.
we're talking about folks we consider to be a part of marginalized or underserved communities. Oh, we have the best plan. We're innovative. It's 2021. We're progressive. We're this, we're that. We know how to implement programs and structures. And the fact is, we don't. We don't. And I think it's backfired every time. And I think we need to be more intentional about recognizing that and living in that truth and empowering those who live in those communities to direct us in how to support them.
Right. Good intentions aren't quite enough anymore, right?
Correct. Correct.
Right. Okay, good. Well, and I know we have a broadband initiative in our state as well that is intended to, really help connect those communities that allow that access that you talk about and make it possible. So awesome. Great. Okay. Thank you for your thoughts on that. Really appreciate that. Okay. And so along the same lines, Netta, I would love to, to challenge you to talk about a little bit about IT and engineering jobs in North Carolina. We, understand that those are some of the best paying jobs in our economy, and but women have traditionally been minorities in those communities. So how can companies, organizations, and institutions of learning be more successful in recruiting women into STEM fields?
Yeah, I think that really starts also with our public school education, is how are we in the K through 12 system really providing opportunities for young girls to start learning about STEM fields and start learning about opportunities of what they want to study in future education. So it really starts from K through 12, but it also goes into, like, I study sustainable materials and technology. I was one of 2 women in my graduating class. And our class that major has started to grow now, but I think the statistics of women to men graduating from STEM majors continues to be very staggeringly low. And my first job after the Sanders campaign, I worked in IT in Cary as a project manager. And obviously, there are not very many women in leadership positions within companies. And that is really a huge thing for companies to take a look at themselves and recognize we can't talk about investing more for women in STEM when we're not even investing in our own companies to uplift women into leadership positions and executive positions. I actually helped at that company start the Women in IT Forum, where we got our CIO at the time, he signed on to support it and be a sponsor of a forum place for women to come together once a month and talk about like what are ways that we can support each other to grow opportunities for how few managers there are that are female directors, vice presidents, what type of leadership training skills can we take, what type of skill development training, and having those constant conversations. But also we realized and recognized that our speakers were always other women. And we need to truly be a successful organization within our company. We needed the men to step up. And that meant calling our executives who were males to come and present and also listen to what the women were talking about and have presentations company wide and really starting to build. And it started from a group that was just about like 20 women coming together for pizza over lunch to talk about what's going on at work, to like 100, 130 people that we had to keep booking larger rooms at the office. And that really only happens when the leadership in the company is supportive of this initiative. So we need companies that are also coming in to Durham. And that's one thing that Chair Howerton and I, we have to look at companies that are coming into Durham and want incentives is how are they making sure that they're supporting women in STEM, and how are we making sure that these companies are held accountable, that they are actually following through with their promises.
Right. So it takes committed leadership, right? Because we know culture starts at the top, right? And then clearly defined paths to leadership for women within our own organizations and institutions. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also, for women to really recognize, like, we've studied the same amount to get into these jobs and positions. We are just as qualified as the men, if not more qualified. And I think I remember reading this one article a while back about, I think it was in the Obama administration, where the women, as they were working, they started to have this practice of every time a woman spoke up in a meeting, they would always have another woman reiterate that point to make sure that it was heard. And I think it's really important to have women supporting other women in all fields, especially in areas where we're not as a common of occurrence.
Oh, I love that. So again, boy, this is really the theme that I've been hearing, is that we're stronger together, right? That linking arms, holding the doors open for each other, makes us so much, it sort of amplifies our power. I've heard several of y'all say that. It's really inspiring. All right, great. Thank you. So we have time for one kind of final speed round. So this question is going to go to each of you. So tell us in about, 1 or 2 minutes, what one thing do you want women participating today to take away from this conversation? And let's start with you, Brenda.
Sure. Thank you. I would say when you decide what you want, take action. Don't wait for that invitation to come in the mail, because the stamp is not on it yet. Make up your mind what it is you want. Be willing to set the goal and create a plan. Without a plan, it becomes a wish. So be willing to create a plan to go at what it is you want, and don't let anything get in your way. Just be willing to take the courses, the training, read the books, and connect to mentors, because there are always somebody else out there that have done what you're doing, and you can always learn something from someone else. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you. All right. What do you think, Vivian? What's one thing you would like for our participants to take away with them today?
Similarly to Commissioner Howerton, I would say bringing that passion to action. That is something that has been ringing true in my mind for about the last week, honestly. It's just bringing passion to action, knowing that you are not insignificant and your voice needs to be heard, knowing that there are huge issues out here. And it's sometimes when you're thinking about such big issues, it makes you think that, what can I do? I can't do anything about that, because it's such a grandiose mission and you're trying to find your place in it. But I would say make sure that you know that your voice needs to be heard. You need to be at the table. There are all types of ways, all places that you can be a part of, and find whichever one that is for you and bring your passion to action, knowing that you can make an influence in your circle of influence. You can utilize your skills and your abilities to help you to further the mission. And then also network. That is a big thing. As I grow and as I move forward, I am finding that networking, that the resounding theme of today, Stronger Together, is not just a cliche, it's a fact. I've seen it with the Women's Commission and with partnering with different people. We're able to reach farther. We're able to have a greater impact in the community, and we're also able to engage more. So I would say go run, do it.
I love it. Okay. What do you think, Neva?
I think one thing that we know is that women on average have to be asked 7 times to run for office before they say yes. If I could leave anything with the women watching today, is don't wait 7 times. Go for it the first time. Don't even wait for someone to ask you, as Chair Howerton mentioned, is step up and lead because it's your turn. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't your turn because women were made to lead. It's in our very nature and instinct to want to be leaders and to want to take care of the people around us, and a reminder that you're not alone in this entire process, and you're not going to be the last. For me, I was the first Muslim woman elected in the state of North Carolina, and one thing that's a big reminder for me is even when things start to get tough, is that I'm reminded I'm hopefully not the last. And there are other young women who are looking up to all of us on this panel and looking to see what we accomplish so that they know that there's opportunity for them to accomplish something similar.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Nana? What do you think?
I would say it's really important for us to go where we are needed. And it may not always feel like we are wanted in those spaces, but we are stronger than that. We are better than that. And I don't believe that we are led to fulfill purposes that are not meant for us to fulfill. I think that especially women of color in that discussion are often even more marginalized, right? When we try to occupy these spaces. And I think it's really important for me to remind everyone that just go anyway. And I think it echoes what my counterparts have said today, but I really want to emphasize that, especially for women of color. When you think about all the challenges that women have gone through, right, in this country and beyond, you can't critically think about those challenges and really be committed to addressing them until you really center and prioritize the unique challenges of women of color. And I think unless and until we are intentional about doing that, our concept of where women are needed and where women should be will always be skewed and will never be as intentional as it should be. So women, especially women of color, go where you are needed. You are needed everywhere. And wherever that fits in for you, go there and do so boldly. So that is all on my end.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you to this amazing panel. I'm so inspired. I told you guys this was going to be a really, really inspiring conversation. Before we wrap up, we had a couple of questions in the chat about creating women's commissions. I just want to put in one more plug for all of y'all listening to head over to the Council for Women website, where we actually have not only all of our great reports and information about the council, but we've actually created a really fantastic guide for creating a commission that I think is going to answer a ton of those questions. And I just want to thank our panelists again. And before we wrap, I'm going to hand it back over to Annette, who has a special surprise for us. Annette, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for leading that discussion. And thank you to our Durham commissioners and counselors for the insightful conversation and really for just how you're making a difference in Durham. And so now for more inspiration, please join me in welcoming Ms. Bismita Taniti from Goldsboro Youth Council.
I was born February 6, 2004. As a child, I grew up always wanting more. Before me came many other women. All of them deserve recognition. They sat in front of government buildings. They fought for education despite the killing. And when coming up with an answer, I always got stuck. But now I know who I want to be. I want to be these women who have fought to be free. I want to be Greta. I want to be Malala. But who are these women? They didn't stay hidden. They made the first incision. They didn't sit back and listen. They held the ambition. They didn't stay in their prison. They shot the ammunition. Because of these women, I can get an education. I can become a politician. I can be a physician. I can be whomever I want to be because of this gift that I have been given. A gift made of suffering, wrapped by the hands of Sojourner Truth, sealed with the words of St. Austin, labeled with the writing of Cady Stanton, loved by the poems of Maya Angelou, sent by the hard work of Marie Curie, delivered by the voice of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and opened by the smile of Kamala Harris.
Oh,
I was
gosh.
born on February 6th, 2004. I have always looked for more, and there is more. All we have to do now is open the door.
Thank you very much to Bismita, and that was so appropriate as we go into April, which is actually National Poetry Month. Bismita has been a part of our Goldsboro Youth Council since her freshman year, and she's now a junior at the Wayne School of Engineering in Goldsboro. So we thank you. Let's applaud and celebrate the talent of our youth. So as we close, I would like to thank each of our esteemed guests today for our Women's History Month event. And I'd like to bring your attention again to the reports that our chair, Jenny Black, has mentioned. If you're interested in establishing a Women's Commission, Council has produced over the last year or so our political participation report, our health and wellness report, and our employment and earnings report, all focused on the status of women in North Carolina. And finally, I would be remiss to not honor a trailblazer, Miss Andrea Harris, who is no longer with us, but whose legacy lives on through the work of the Governor Cooper's Andrea Harris Task Force. The task force first report to the governor is also available on the Council for Women's website to honor her legacy and to respond to the governor around needs for women. and marginalized communities impacted by COVID. So again, this concludes our program. We thank you for being present with us today, and happy Women's History Month.